Hello, and welcome to Career Landscapes, a peek into professional lives, brought to you by One Voice for Change. I'm your host, Felicity Minch, and today we have the honor of speaking with Kyle Otte, and he's a professional auto mechanic here in Boulder, Colorado. And I will take a moment and read a bit about him. Kyle was born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and he enjoyed solving problems through mechanical paths. He started taking things apart at a very young age and worked on cars through high school. He also has held multiple other types of jobs until entering the field full-time of auto repair. He currently is holding most ASE certifications, and he enjoys adapting new tech to old vehicles. Welcome, Kyle. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Well, I'm so excited. I've just got to start with the funny part here when it says I started taking things apart at a very young age. Um, Tell us more about that.
I think it's just tough there to go way back into little moments, but um, you know, taking bicycles apart and different little things and cars, and my mom has told stories of me taking a toaster apart at a young age to try to make it work better. So, there's always been the curiosity to tinker with things and try to figure out how they work and hopefully they go back together and still work.
Great. So I always tell kids that our talents are often at a young age. We just sometimes don't recognize them until we're older. And then we look back and realize, aha, put things together. So what you said you worked on cars all the way through high school. What were you working on? Or did you work at a shop, or was it in your own garage? Was it your own cars or your parents' cars?
Well, um, So in high school, I worked at I worked with a friend of mine, and we would buy cheap cars and see if we could put them back together and make them run and sell them and put the profit back into something else. And so I had an aptitude for it as a kid. My grandfather worked at a Buick dealership for 40 years selling cars. So my grandfather and my father both had inclination or an assimilation with cars. And so, of the five kids in my family, I'm the one who really took to the taking them apart and fixing those things. And so in high school, we spent a lot of time just taking things apart and putting things together. And will this work? And will that work? And digging around in junkyards and going to the library, finding print media to find out what the secret numbers were that you needed. And so I spent a lot of time with that, and didn't at that point in my life, I didn't think a mechanic was my path, and so I did a lot of college prep classes and business style classes in college.
I bet the business classes really helped you because you said you worked with people reselling the cars, and so you actually gained entrepreneur skills at a young age and communication skills at a young age and working with people. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's I think in this day and age, you really need to be kind of cross trained, right? You need to be able to have the to be able to communicate, whether that's digitally or in person. And for some folks, one of those is really easy, one of those is not.
Mhm.
Um, I think the same thing is can be said for learning about money and the value of money and how hard you need to work to do different things. And um, sometimes you have an inclination of something you want to try. You should try it, but
Mhm.
also know that that may not be what works, but that may lead you to the path that does work.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what's great is I had a couple of kids ask questions. They were curious, and one kid, let me think, oh, an 18-year-old asked, when you're learning about this, are you training in all engine types, that is diesel, he wanted to know if you can work on electric and gasoline powered. I mean, are you trained across all three, or do mechanics specialize in one area?
So you can have multiple applications or capabilities. I was more self-taught. I didn't do any educational process for school. I was lucky to, in high school, I worked at a dealership that did Buick and GMC. And so I had some limited jobs there, not high tech by any stretch of the imagination, but um, a good environment to look and listen and have people offer guidance of don't do this or do this. And so in that question, in that vein, I think you can find a specialty if there's something that you really enjoy. I tend to work on everything. So part of the rotation for me now, um, I do trainings. They do a lot of digital trainings. There's a bunch of capabilities for free trainings for people who are in the industry, where they're an hour or a 2 hour, lunch class or what have you on electronics or on current diesel technology or current electric car technology. So I have all of those skill sets. I don't go incredibly deep in each one of those, but I have the capability to do all of that stuff.
That's great. That's great. So are you saying, do you have to take occasional training classes?
It's
Like teachers have to do professional
Mhm,
development classes.
mhm.
And do you do the classes or keep up with current trends with new models of cars coming out?
We do because there's a lot of the technology is accelerating pretty quickly electronically, both with the interface in your car of touchscreens and climate control and pairing your phone and different things like that, but also with the technology with hybrid batteries, some of the diesel technology with emissions control, and also battery stuff with hybrids and also electric cars. So some places have it that it's a mandatory requirement for continuing education. I do it because I like the knowledge. I
Mhm.
like to know where things are going, and sometimes you don't necessarily agree with the way that those progress. But I'm a big fan of having knowledge um, to understand where things are going, and have a broader view of what's happening in technology.
Right. So what's the biggest changes, let's say in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years? What's really changed? And maybe you could kind of tell us where you see the future going, especially with AI out there and computers. How is the auto industry or mechanic? How are things going to go, do you think?
So I think the biggest thing that I feel like has happened in the last 10 years has probably been the ability for computer control of a vast majority of the systems in the cars. Um, just like you have a smartphone and you have a smart TV, these new cars are very similar in a lot of their capabilities. Um, the downside is that if you plug in a scan device, it can give you a code. Um, that really becomes a starting point, right? And so that's where the mechanical ability of having some knowledge of how the systems operate, what they do, really will help you decide if that's a false code, if it's a true code, and then you kind of go backwards to prove or disprove that equation. So the electronic technology in the last few years has really gotten the capacity for computing has gone exponentially larger. It used to be
Mhm.
cars were purely mechanical, and um, so it takes a little bit more electronic background, I think, for a lot of the kids today. Um, but I still think there needs to be a really good emphasis on the mechanical capability,
Mhm.
um, because it really does change the knowledge base that you need. You need a little bit from both the
Right.
mechanical and the electrical part of that equation.
Right, right.
Mhm.
So did you study computers? I mean, so if something happens, I guess, in a car, computer wise, do you fix the computer part of it? Or does that have to be sent off to some other specialty? Or do you take care of the computer
Well,
part?
so in the days of old, there was basically a small chip, and a lot of those chips weren't rewritable. So if there was a problem with the computer, you had to replace it. As with your cell phone, as with your computer, as with your tablet. Um, the new ones have the capability that we can go in and update that computer just as much as you can update your cell phone or your laptop. And
Mhm.
so we see a lot less issues with the computers themselves. We tend to see issues with connections, or um, it's looking for something that's not there. And so that will start a trouble code or different things. So we don't really see as much issue directly with the computers themselves, although I do see them fail from time to time. Um,
Mhm.
it's more of a programming, it's more of a software issue with the computers than it is hardware.
Right. Right. Oh, I
Mhm.
understand. Great. Well, for a youngster, a high school, college, if they wanted to go into the field, what would you tell them to do, and how would they start in the field?
I think sometimes it's tough to get a leg into the industry. I think with a lot of jobs, they say, "Do you have this skill set? Can you do this? Can you do that?" Um, I think finding somewhere that has an opportunity that will provide you some training is good. A lot of times that's going to be a trade school. There are starting to be more vocational schools that are offering part-day programs through high schools, which I think are great. Um, I think getting an introduction into it in high school or a vocational school, I think really does help because that will guide you closer to um, maybe a path that's parallel to it, but might not be what you think it is.
Mhm.
Um, I think it also will uh, give you an opportunity to find in some of those educational processes things that you like as a specialty. There's a lot of, with the computer technology, there's a lot of technology emerging where it does
Mhm.
take somebody who can sift through data and find something where it's coded wrong. Um, there is always going to be the mechanical process of doing it. So I think starting out in this industry, anywhere that you can get vocational training, you can get some kind of training. Um, I think there's a fair amount of value in a lot of the YouTube stuff. I think
Mhm. Right.
there are some avenues that it's still good knowledge. I don't know that it's great knowledge, but there's
Mhm.
also stuff out there that's great as well. And so I think having that aptitude and kind of challenging yourself, whether you're taking your bicycle apart or you're
Mhm.
replacing something in your computer, I think those are good things. So it's a lot of times the dealerships will offer training. Um, you can get a certification through a lot of the dealerships. They'll start you out at a pretty low level. An oil change position is usually the first spot, and then they'll
Mhm.
work you into different level technicians, different groups, whether it's engine, transmission, electrical, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So there's a myriad of ways to get into the industry.
Mhm.
You know, I got into the industry by hanging out with people who liked cars and took things apart. And, a couple of my good friends in high school that I spent a lot of car time with are engineers. And so I
Mhm.
think we all kind of do the same thing. We just do it slightly different.
Yeah. Oh, interesting, interesting. Um, so let me look here. I have, actually you answered, oh, did you go to trade school? A 17-year-old student asked, did you go to trade school, community college, or learn on the job? You covered that a little bit earlier. You said you took some college classes.
Yep. So I did a handful of years of community college and a little bit of time at a regular college or a 4-year school,
Mhm.
but was more business related than anything else. It wasn't. It. I've always done mechanical things for myself and for family and other people. but it wasn't until I don't know, I was late 20s, early 30s before I had the opportunity to come back into it. But was a tough decision because I didn't know if I wanted my hobby to become my day job.
Yeah. Interesting.
And and you know, I'm glad I did.
Mhm.
It provides me a good living. I like what I do. Um, but sometimes those are tough equations. Do you want, does it change how that affects you as far as do you want to do this for a full-time job?
Mhm.
I think it's a great job. I think it's a great path. But just like everything else, there are days where you just don't want to do it.
Mhm. So what's an incredibly good day for you? What does a good day look like? Um, just, what's a great day?
For me, a good day is going in. Um, as a mechanic, there's a fair amount that is called production work, where folks will come in and they need brakes replaced, or they need an alternator replaced, or they need uh, a recommended service, a scheduled service, a mileage or a time-based service. So
Mhm.
those are nice because there's not, you can, if you're good at what you do, you can make good time on those and they pay really well.
Mhm.
But then it's also nice to have some problem solving, something that comes in that somebody will say, I've had this at 4 other shops. Nobody's been able to solve it. It does this, it does this. And so I think that's where communication capabilities, um, being able to kind of ask questions and be able to discern the data from
Mhm.
clients and try to solve that. So I think on a good day for me, the regular day is a little bit of both of those, where it's you can make some money and you're going to cover your paycheck, but also working outside the box and problem solving to get those done. And then you know, I'm probably a strange person for it, but I actually will work on cars after work as well. And so in a perfect day, there will be time to work on, something vintage or a project or help somebody with, you know, something
Mhm.
different that's not in my regular days with work.
Mhm. And what is a really tough day? Are rough days because of customers, or is it more?
Uh,
Yeah, what's a tough
so
day?
tough days are um, sometimes solving problems that you've created yourself. Um, whether it's purely by accident or just happenstance or
Mhm.
um, mistakes happen and that's part of it. And it's not whether they do or don't happen, it's how you handle that. And so there are moments in time where things don't go well, or you have a lot of time invested in a job and you find that
Mhm.
there's a failure that wasn't accounted for, or um, you know a bolt is broken, or there's damage that's done that you kind of have to stop and reevaluate, take a deep breath, maybe walk outside for a minute and come back and go, okay, let's figure out how to solve this, right? And I think a big part of that too, I think a big part of having a good day and a not good day is also knowing when to reach out to other people for assistance. And I've done this for a long time, and I regularly reach out to people to say, "This is
Mhm.
strange. Have you seen this? Have you?" And so I think it's a good network when you have people around you that are willing to offer you that. They also rely on you for those same symbiotic relationships. So that works. That turns a
Mhm.
bad day into a better day.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I was at the mechanic a couple of weeks ago, and a gentleman comes in to talk to the woman who's right across from me, and he said, "We just got the rabbit out of your bumper and we let it go." So there were, I didn't know rabbits could climb into bumpers, and so what's the strangest thing, or what unusual story do you have with all your experience? What is a very odd or unusual story that you can tell us?
We have had years back when I was living in the mountains, we had a client with a later model Volkswagen Beetle,
Oh yeah,
and
that's what
they
I
brought it
drove.
in. Yeah, they brought it in because it wouldn't start. And so we got in there and we found wires chewed. And so we pulled it into the shop and we repaired the harness and everything was functional. And we pulled it back out. We called the customer and we said, your car's ready. And they said, okay. So they came down the next day. They went to start the car. It wouldn't start. So we lift the hood. All the wires are chewed. And so we bring the car back in the shop. We leave it overnight. That was at the end of the day. We leave it overnight. We go come in the shop the next morning. We open the hood, and about a 4 pound or 5 pound marmot jumped out of the hood and went just running out of the shop out the door. And we were like, wow, okay. So that was a 3-time repair that it took a few tries, but that was probably one of the crazier ones that we've had.
Wow. Well, the rabbit in the bumper, I was so surprised. And they said it happens all the time that critters get into the engines, they get into, um, I just never thought about that. So,
It does.
um,
It's tied to the manufacturers are always trying to make things more efficient, more robust.
mhm,
And the current one is they are using a coating on the wires in the cars that it's a synthetic coating, but there is a phthalate in it that ultimately smells like food. And so it is an attractant to mice, rabbits, um, some of the smaller mammals. And so they presume it's food. And so a lot of the new cars um, have a lot of this wiring. And so it's a fairly regular basis. Cars that are parked at trailheads, cars that live outside and aren't driven very regularly. We tend to see a fairly robust industry in replacing a lot of this wiring.
yeah, so you might have to have a vet on hand too. No, I'm just joking, but
Yeah, right. Yeah,
um,
we've had to evacuate a few rabbits from cars, and they get out of the shop, and then they're in the shop, and they don't want to leave, and it's an interesting equation. Yeah.
and a 14-year-old boy asks, do you have to own all your own tools when you're working at a shop? Or does the owner of the shop own the tools and you use them? So how do tools work?
So that's a good question. There's a lot of variability in that. I've worked at shops where you're expected to own everything. Um, I've worked at shops where there's a lot of the limited use tools or um, kind of specialty tools that the
Mhm.
shop will provide or they will have for you.
Right.
You don't, if you get into the industry, it's a side conversation, but there will be mobile tool dealers that come by that will sell you everything you need for
Oh,
bite
yeah, like,
size.
Snap-on tools or something like that. Yeah,
Snap-on or Matco or Cornwell, Mac tools. There's a myriad of them.
right.
And so it is a good idea, but you don't need to start out with a brand new Snap-on box. You don't need to toolbox. You don't need to start out with a lot of those things right out of the gate. It's nice to have a small hand set of tools and make those things work. But it's not something that you ultimately need to spend $6 or $8 or $10,000 just to get your regular day job to function with it. So a small
Right.
set of tools to start out. Everybody has to start out with something. So
Mhm.
I tell a lot of kids, if you think you're going to be into the industry, um, a lot of times you can find good deals on used tools or buy a nice starter set and go from there before you go absolutely bananas with your credit card and the mobile tool dealer.
Yeah, and tools are expensive. They they're amazingly expensive. So,
Tools
um,
are expensive, and I think if you pick and choose how you buy them and you pick and choose how you use them, they will make you money. But
mhm,
buying specialty tools that you don't ever use, not sometimes aren't a great investment. It's also if you have good rapport with your coworkers, somebody will have this specialty tool, someone else will have a specialty tool. So depending on your rapport with that group of folks, a lot of times we'll
mhm.
borrow tools from each other and
Yes,
kind of return the
we
favor.
Yeah, we have a co-op here on my street and we borrow each other's tools and
Mhm.
we only have a couple of lawnmowers and we all have thrown in the money for lawnmowers and we each borrow lawnmowers so that each one of us does not have to have a lawnmower.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible street and we have this neighborhood community where we borrow and share and yeah, it's
Yep.
a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm trying to think here. You've answered some of these. Um, oh, how do you think AI is going to play in the future with the auto mechanic? How, I mean, you talked about computers and all, but is there anything we still need humans to actually work on cars? And I think we
I,
always will. I mean, I can't imagine AI coming in and taking your job over.
well, I think there's going to be more of a presence in it. I think
Mm,
whether people request it or not.
mm,
I think that's a pathway that it's already coming with a lot of the automated driving cars and stuff like that. Um, I think the human element will be solving some of the problems with those where AI may give you a head start on what it thinks the problem is or where it thinks the failure is.
mhm,
Um, but I think it's ultimately going to come down to the mechanic or the technician
right,
to use the best known practices and his or her knowledge base in
mhm,
order to solve if that is really the correct path or if there's some other failure that's causing that.
mm.
So
Yeah, that's
I think it's coming.
yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of AI solving the problem first or trying to solve it first, and then you take over from there. Huh,
Mhm.
yeah. Um, uh, and then on the career trajectory, what is moving up in the career? I mean, you start out probably a little bit lower pay with lower experience, but then when you move up, what does that look like?
So typically, as you evolve, kind of onto higher tiers, the pay grade goes up. A lot of the job assignment will go up as well. Um, so when you first start, there's a limited amount that they'll have you do. As you show the aptitude, as you accrue more trainings and certifications, that will carry you to a higher level where a lot of times you'll get a lot better paying jobs. And as you get efficient with those jobs, um, a lot of mechanics in this industry are paid on a what's called a flat rate. So if a
Mhm.
job pays 3 hours, um, and you can do that job in 2 hours, that leaves you more room in the rest of your day to work in other jobs. And so if you are good at what you do, you can flag more hours in a week than you actually worked. And
Hmm.
so it gives you that opportunity as you get higher on that tier,
Mhm.
you a lot of times you'll get better jobs or jobs that you're more efficient at that you can actually start to generate a little bit different revenue, but also have deeper jobs as opposed to doing an oil change and changing brakes. You can do a clutch or you can um, do a deeper engine service that is a little bit more complicated
Hmm.
as you evolve. So ultimately, you'll get up to the top where you can handle pretty much anything that comes through, or be very good or efficient at all of the other jobs.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was just thinking it was a flat salary per year. I didn't realize it was per job.
Well,
Interesting.
and some are flat salary. Some will pay
Mhm.
you, X amount for the week, and that's how it goes. I've worked in both, and I think a lot of it depends on um, how motivated you are. Um, there's days where there's great motivation, and there's days you're drawing from an empty cup.
Mhm.
So a lot of the jobs that they will have you start on will probably be flat rate jobs as they're getting you to come in the door. Some places will be salaried, but it just depends. And I think once you start to show that work ethic, that will change. The pay scales and the job severities of different things will increase.
Mhm. Ah, and oh, once one of my students asked, how did COVID, that year that we just were locked down, how did that affect the auto mechanic industry? Because people weren't driving as much, of course, and was your work cut way back?
We were, I think the shop that I work at fared very well. Um, we were on limited work schedules,
Mhm.
but we service a handful of different manufacturers, and so our management had certain groups of guys coming in on certain days, so we could
Mhm.
kind of limit the contact with everybody, but still trying to keep everybody working.
Yes.
Um, we were pretty lucky. We had a lot of clientele um, that had family or children, college age kids that were out of state. And
Mhm.
so we had quite a few people that were saying, we really need to kind of have this done. And are you open? Can we have it taken care of? And so um, we were pretty we were pretty good with that. Um, and really just kind of having some flexibility to stay busy. It wasn't crazy busy, but
Yeah.
it was steady. It was enough to keep the lights on and groceries in the fridge.
I mean, come to think of it, there were so many delivery drivers, delivering groceries and delivering food that, yeah, people were still driving. Um, and then,
We considered ourselves essential.
yes, you are essential. You definitely are essential. Um, is there a typical work-life balance? But does the shop have you work typically 40 hours a week? Or can you work as much or as little as you like? How does that work?
So most shops will they're going to ask you for a minimum commitment of 5 days a week. A lot of the dealership experience is 6 days a week, but you'll rotate those Saturdays, or some will have you working Tuesday through Saturday, and then some of the staff will work Monday through Friday. Um, I I currently work 4 day weeks, so I have Wednesdays off. That started I had asked for more time off when my children were young,
Mhm.
and was very appreciative that they allowed that. Um, and so I work 4 day weeks, but I tend to be one of the first people there in the morning, and I tend to be one of the last people to leave.
Mhm.
So um, a lot of times there will be flexible schedules. Some shops are open till 9 o'clock, so you'll have some guys that are working noon to 8 or noon to 9. So it just kind of depends on the industry. A lot of
Mhm.
there's different places in different industries where there's late shifts, there's
Mhm.
overnight shifts. A lot of the um, RTD and heavy duty folks work
Yeah.
different shifts as well, just because time doesn't wait for any of that stuff. So most of it will be Monday through Friday, and I would say the vast majority of it is going to be 40-hour work weeks
Hmm.
as a
Interesting.
ballpark.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. I think that's all the questions from my kids, from the students. Yeah. Yeah, I guess my question is, what are the top skills do you think somebody should have being an auto mechanic? I mean, of course, knowledge of what they're doing, but what other skills are really, really needed to succeed in this industry?
Um, I think some of the skills that I value are um, having the ability to solve some problems.
Mhm.
Sometimes you need to be able to reach out to some people. I mean, there's not an expectation that every person knows how to solve everything. So I think having the ability to work through those issues. Um, I think being honest and standing behind what you do. I've had clients that, whether a fault of mine or a fault of theirs, who's ever, no fault at that point,
Mhm.
um, were unhappy. And in that equation, that led to me saying, if you're not happy, you're welcome to, you don't have to pay. You're welcome to just take everything and here you go. There's no harm, no foul. So I think being honest, is a big part of the automotive trade. There are a lot of dishonest, and I think sometimes it's, if there's enough money involved and you're paid well enough, some people look aside. I think, honesty is a really big one for me, and I think at the end, um, understanding that there are going to be tough days with no matter what job you do, but if you're doing a good job and you're working for somebody who appreciates you, it will always work out. It will always be okay. Just having a little bit of patience, because it takes a lifetime to learn it. And so some of that stuff is just kind of slowing down and let yourself go at a pace that works for you.
Mhm. And I would think, yeah, good communication skills, um, yeah, honesty, building trust,
Mm-hmm.
keeping your word, showing up on time,
Mm-hmm.
really, yeah, just doing a great job, having great ethical, the value of work, I would think. Yeah.
I think those are, and I think those are a lot of the pieces to the puzzle. And I think if you're taking a lot of those tenets,
Mhm.
you'll be fine no matter what you do.
Mhm.
But I think it's, doing what you say and showing up on time and being, um, being present. I can
Mhm.
tell you that one of the things that, I see as a big detriment in this industry right now is cell phones. And
Oh,
being
do
able to
they,
put being
they're
able to put
constantly
your
looking at the
yep
phone?
being able to put your phone away, um,
Yeah,
for at least half a day,
right, right.
uh, turns out to be a surprisingly tough thing for some folks.
Mhm.
And I understand it, but, I think one of the things that I would add to that too is focus. Um, if you can stay focused, if you can fulfill the job task, it's easier to stay focused and get it done and check the box than it
Mhm.
is to start it, go on your phone, do whatever, go get a cup of
Mhm.
coffee. If you're not focused on a lot of that realm,
Mhm.
that's when mistakes happen. And so I think
Mhm.
it's, the cell phone use in this industry is, I've worked in some shops where you can have it at all. It's got to be in your car, or in your lunchbox, or wherever it is.
Right.
Other shops will allow you to have it as long as there's no problems. So
Mhm.
that would be a thing that I would tell young kids: if you're going to get into this industry, you need to make sure that you can detach yourself from that for at least a half a day, if that's the case.
Yeah. It's funny, I have the same problem with teaching students music lessons, guitar lessons, 30 minutes without their phone, and you'd think they were gonna die.
That's a
So,
life. Yeah.
but they'll wanna, if it's in their pocket and it's just constantly zzz, 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 ding,
And
ding.
it's hard not to.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. So I asked them to turn it off and
Mm-hmm.
focus. That's the big thing, is focus.
Mm-hmm.
Kids have to learn how to concentrate and focus for at least a period of time, so that they're not just few seconds go by and they think of something else and get distracted. And
Yep.
yeah, I notice focus being a real problem with younger
Yep.
generation.
And I think it's one of those things that if you're conscious of it, um, if you can figure out how to be detached from it,
Mhm.
I think that's just as powerful of a life skill as anything else is these days. So,
Right,
mhm,
right.
yep.
So do you think the kids today are going to have to learn different skills? Well, they have to learn, of course, communication, focus, and all that. But other than that, do you think they're going to be faced with a lot of different, needing to gain different skills than when you were learning how to do this? And if
Um,
so, what would the skills, what would the different skills be, if any?
yeah, I think a lot of it's the same. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's a lot of the application, I think, is going to be different.
Yeah.
Working on hybrids, you have to understand electrical current a little differently. On old cars, it was 6-volt batteries or 12-volt batteries, and you could touch the terminals. They don't shock you.
Right.
It's way less of a safety thing. But on new cars, the voltage is incredible, and so I think in order to do some of the service on the new cars, you have to do a service to disconnect on the, like hybrids and anything that carries large battery power. That's going to change the rotation of what they have to do in order to service some of the other things. So I think that aspect of it is going to change. They have to do a little bit more precautionary items, and that is a big deal. But I think ultimately you're still going to be trying to figure out how to replace things, or what the most efficient way to service those pieces. So I think it's same but different, right? I think it's just going to change the order of how they do things. It may take a few steps out on one part of it, but it may add a couple steps on the other part of it. So I think I'd say it's probably net even.
Mhm.
It's just a little bit of adaptation on both sides of the equation.
Yeah. If you had to guess, when do you think we'll all be at self-driving cars? Is that too far down the road, or if you had
No,
to guess?
I think we I think we possess the capability for fully self-driving cars now.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's going to take a couple years to sell it to the general public, as far as safe. And I think there still will have to be limited oversight from humans. So a lot of the new cars, they have an eye camera that watches your eyes if you're paying attention, or you have to touch the steering wheel within a minute or 60 seconds to 90 seconds. Or so they're building in things that again, to focus, you still have to be present.
Right.
The self-driving stuff is coming. I think there will also be more infrastructure issues to solve with some of the stuff.
Mhm.
So, long story, I'd say probably between 5 and 7 years would be my guess. Um, I think technology is doubling on itself every couple years, and so I think that it will be there. I don't know how popular it will be. I think for some crowds, I think it's going to be huge. I think for other crowds, people are going to say, "No, thanks, don't need
Yeah,
it."
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, is there anything else? Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to talk about, or anything that I may have missed, or
No, I think
um,
I think it's a pretty good path. I think if you I think you have interest in it. I think it behooves you to follow up in it. If sometimes that's why I said earlier, it may not, you may find that you have more interest in designing the car than working on the car,
hmm,
or you have more interest maybe in, um, we deal with a lot of companies that do remanufacturing of parts.
mhm,
And so, or you work for an independent part supplier, or there's a lot of avenues that are tied to it. There's a lot of ways that you still can check the box and fulfill that curiosity,
mhm,
also make a paycheck. Um,
mhm,
but it's an evolving thing. I've done it my whole life, but for a large part of my life, I didn't. And so I think it gets to a point. I work with some guys that at the end of the day, they go home. They don't
mhm,
think about it. They don't want to think about it. They don't have any interest in any of it. Um, and then there are folks like myself who are like, sure, let's bring in your old car and let's, convert it to disc brakes, or let's convert it to fuel injection, or let's put in an overdrive transmission. So um, I really, for me, I like the I like the feel of an old car, but I like the adaptation from some of the new technology, which when you work in this industry, you see a lot of that technology daily.
mhm,
So for me, being clever and trying to make that work with an old car, but yet still feel and look like an old car.
Right, right.
So yeah, those are the there's challenges every day, but it's a good path.
Yeah, it sounds like a great field for those who are interested and for anyone who's starting to take things apart as a young age. And
Unplug the toaster first.
that's funny. But you definitely have the passion. I can just tell you love this work and we will always need an auto mechanic. I mean, even for the self-driving cars, no matter what, that is a career that is not going anywhere anytime soon. So,
Yep,
yeah.
agreed.
Well, thank you for your time, and you can just stay on and for a few more minutes. But I would like to thank you so much, and thank you everybody for watching this video. And for more information, there'll be more information about where Kyle works, Hoshi Motors and Kyle, and information about One Voice for Change in the links below. So please reach out if you have any questions. I'm sure Kyle would love to answer questions. If you have any, please send them to me and I'll forward them to Kyle. But thank you for watching Career Landscapes, and we wish you all the best, Kyle. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. All right. Bye-bye.